Chapter 198. Part 3 of 3. We appeared on the deck of the airship, right near the very front. Silver Quill, Doppel, and Cot were standing there. Everyone else was grey, so I figured they were the important ones. So how do you feel about life on the ship, Silver? Doppel asked. I know it takes some getting used to. I think it's amazing, Silver said. I never thought I would get to even ride an airship, let alone live in one. I suppose it's certainly an upgrade for you, Cot said, rubbing the back of her neck. It took me ages to get used to the cramped rooms. I used to sneak in and cuddle with Nav when she was sleeping to help me get over it, but then her filly started doing it and I couldn't get away with it anymore. Speaking of which, do you already know the most important rule? Doppel asked. Oh, Watcher already gave me the number 1 rule, Silver replied with a nod. Never get between the lady and her filly. Given what happened to Pertz, I don't think I could survive Lady Navarrone's bad side. It wouldn't be her bad side you'd have to worry about, Doppel said. Nav's volatile and violent to those who she decides are enemies. No offense to you, but there's no way you'd ever classify as an enemy to her. Taya, on the other hoof. She's a lot more fickle. And she's a lot more volatile than Nav ever was. Silver was actually starting to look slightly scared. Taya was well past looking angry. Don't be afraid, Cot said. Just keep being yourself and you'll never need to worry about either of them. For some reason, that made Silver tilt her head. What do you mean, keep being myself? I thought Lady Navarrone changed everyone and made them better. Is that what she does? Cot slowly asked, looking over to Doppel. I mean, I'm nowhere near the same changeling I was when I met her, Doppel said. And Nav was the focal point for most of my changes, but I don't know if that's really the best way to put it. And I'm definitely not the same cat, Cot said. Have you heard the phrase diamond in the rough? I have, Silver replied with a nod. Think of it like that. You were handpicked by the great Lady Navarrone, Silver. That makes you one of her gems. Over time, with her help, you'll chisel away at all the things that make you weak and afraid. That's a good way to put it, Doppel said. But still not quite right. To borrow the gem analogy, let's say I'm obsidian, Cot is citron quartz, and you can be moonstone. We'll call Nav a master jeweler. Her wonderful hands will turn you into the perfect shape and size no matter what you look like. Or to get rid of the analogy, she'll take a look at all the things you're good at, assign you tasks in those areas, and then never bother you about them until she needs a status report. It's amazing. Cot said. I expected to be micromanaged when I was a slave, but the master assassins almost always kept tabs on me even past my apprenticeship. Nav actually lets me do my thing. Assassins. Silver quietly said, blanching slightly. Right. Doppel said, completely ignoring the boring accountant. Back when I used to spy for Chrysalis, I had to constantly check in with the local contacts. It was so boring and it ended with them getting caught more than once. Spy. Silver squeaked. Nav doesn't just change people, Silver, Cot said, reaching down to bop the mare. She builds them up into something they never imagined. And then she allows you to do your job in peace, Doppel said, sighing with delight. I never really thought I'd enjoy being a maid, but working with Nav has been great. I don't get to torture or murder as much as I'd like, but I'm still having a lot of fun too, Cot said with a warm grin. I don't know why, but Silver's ears both dropped. Something about Lady Navi is just, her paws clasped together under her chin and she looked up. Ooh, I just wanna cuddle her. Ugh, not again, Doppel said, rolling her eyes. Her body flashed and turned into me, complete with a decent dress. Cot immediately hugged her and Doppel sighed. She'll be like this for a few minutes, the fake me said. Trust me when I say you don't want to watch. And since you're a witness now, it's also partially your responsibility to make sure Nav and Taya don't see us like this.
Wait, what?
Silver said.
Why can't they see you?
Nav doesn't like when I use her body without her permission. But if I had to wait to get her permission to calm Kot down, there might be casualties. And Taya always knows immediately when I'm pretending to be Nav, so she'd definitely be angry. Go keep a lookout on the stairs. Silver was looking more and more scared by the word, so she took the chance to run and did so without a backwards glance. Was that a little too much? Kot asked when Silver was far enough to turn grey. If she can't stand us when we're being silly, she absolutely won't be able to stand us when we actually do scary things. A few awkward seconds passed. Are you going to let me go? A few more seconds passed before Kot sweetly grinned and wrapped her entire body around the fake me, giggling in glee. Doppel sighed and hung her head. With that, they both went grey. I was kinda wondering how that conversation went, I said. What do you think, Taya? I think it's rude to talk about people behind their back. Taya said, slapping a hoof on the deck. Especially a washed-up whore and a psycho-murderer. That made my guide giggle. Are you describing them, or yourselves? She gaily asked. Hey, I have never once charged anyone for it, I said. I am a washed-up slut, thank you very much. Although Doppel also hasn't, so. Yes she has, Taya said. She told me that her most popular disguise was a prostitute. It was easy to feed herself, easy to make money, and easy to disappear. Then I stand corrected, I said. And I would appreciate it if you didn't call my filly a psychopath. I'm doing my absolute best to turn her into a sociopath, thank you very much. How's that supposed to be better? My guide asked. You can't really cure the underlying condition, either way, I said. All you can do is make someone better suited to be in society. And there's literally no one better suited to society than a sociopath. So I'm doing my best to teach my psycho-filly how to behave so she can graduate to socio instead. I don't know how to feel about that, Taya slowly said. So what's the difference in a psychopath and a sociopath? Do you remember Miguel? The dude Discord sent to attack us in Stalingrad. Yeah. He murdered children for fun, cut their faces off, dried them, and carried them around with him. That's a psychopath. Now think about Oldalscha. She put her emotionlessness to use and built up a huge nation off the suffering of millions. The main difference between a psychopath and a sociopath is how well they're able to cope in society. Psychos can't really do it and end up losing their shit. Socios learn how to blend in, and since they don't care about the suffering of others, they freely and willingly benefit from it. As my Eternifili, you're powerful enough that you have to be able to blend in. I guess that makes sense, Taya said. Don't you think she should aim higher than being crazy? My guide asked. We have to start somewhere, I said with a shrug. Once she learns complete self-control, we'll be able to more safely work through issues. Anyway, we're off subject. We sure are, Pride said. You want the first takeaway? If you'd be so kind, I said. Silver Quill was incredibly honored that you hired her, he said. She also had very high expectations of you as an employer. I'll go ahead and give you a spoiler to say that you surpassed them. That's kinda before I could finish, Taya used magic to gag me. It's not sad. Taya said. Why do you always say that? I wanted to reply, but she didn't ungag me. She doesn't like getting compliments, the guide said. They make her feel weird and awkward because she still isn't used to them. Because of that, she does her best to brush them off. Also, it's rude to ask her a question and then not ungag her. Oh, shoot, sorry. The light around her horn fizzled out and I could finally close my mouth. I don't actually use any magic energy in here, so I forgot I still had it active. No worries, it saved me from having to answer, I said. I can understand Silver being honored. I rescued her, after all. Well, we saved her, but in her mind, it seems to be mostly me. To be honest, I'm not entirely positive I know what Kot and Doppel are talking about, but I guess I'll take their word for it. What, are you saying I'm not the perfect example? Taya asked. Look where I am now compared to where I was when you found me. From literal gutter trash to the eternophilie of the best mommy ever. Plus I'm super powerful and apparently more attractive than I realized. Hey! I said. A surprising amount of colts at the tower think my bright green eyes are really cute. Told you, silly. So, any other takeaways? Do you want to discuss any of the batshit crazy things Kot said? Pride asked. If I spent time deconstructing Kot's insanity, I would probably never stop. At this point, I'm basically over it. Then the last takeaway is the most important rule on the ship, Pride said. You shut your whore mouth, Spike. Taya said. Wow, you really do take after her, Pride said. Watcher made that the most important rule for a reason, Taya. Think about what that means. It sounds like he's jealous, Taya huffed. It means he was afraid, I said, patting her head. His group is full of hardened soldiers and their number one rule was to never fuck with the filly. That tells you something about what they think of the filly. I won't be scary anymore, Taya quietly said. I'm sorry, Mommy. I never wanted to scare them. Wait, really? I know, Taya, I said. My guide snorted. We both have work to do. And we're both going to help each other. Now, since that was the last takeaway, let's dip on outta here. As you wish, the guide said. Hopefully just to surprise me, her eyes lost all of their light instead. We appeared next to a trotting changeling in the palace at the Crystal Empire. Thankfully, Taya and I were on some kind of conveyor belt that kept pace with Eva. Should we really do this? Eva whispered. Indecisiveness will get you nowhere, Mimeo replied. The choice has been made. We've all agreed. It won't hurt to ask, Polly said. The worst she can do is say no. She's not going to say no, Ganger said. There's no way Nav could ever deny us. Eva has her wrapped around her hoof. I do not. Eva shouted, making a nearby guard look her way. She continued silently, blushing. When the guard was out of sight, she sighed and quietly said, I'm not manipulating her. I'm not. You're just going to use your cute smile and cracking voice to get what you want, Mimeo said. After all, being too cute to hurt was the reason you were created. Eva's body froze. Don't, Polly immediately said. Eva shook and continued trotting. You voted the same as the rest of us, Mimeo. Don't be mean to her just because she's the most likely to actually succeed. Yet, maybe you should try being nicer, Ganger said. Nav is probably still mad about that cow thing. I honestly didn't think she would pick us up and throw us like that. I think it was fun. Eva said. Until we hit the ground, at least. If we're really gonna ask, can we all promise to never make her mad? I'll do my best, Ganger said. I never wanted to make her angry anyway, Polly said. I don't have a death wish, obviously, Mimeo said. Good, Eva said. I'm a little worried about how Taya will react, but I think she'll be happy to have us once she gets over her shock. I really wanted to ask her first, but Nav told so many scary stories that if we don't ask now, we may never get the chance, Mimeo said. As Nav once put it, it's better to have loved and lost than something, Polly said. Truly words of wisdom, Ganger sarcastically replied. Was the rest of it not as profound? Oh no, that's actually verbatim, Polly said. Nav included the something. I remember that now, Eva said. I asked Doppel later and she told me the rest. It's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. I'm not really sure it applies, since we love her regardless, but it'll be nice to know if she feels the same, Polly finished for her. They finally arrived at what I recognized as their room. The light faded from Eva's eyes as soon as her hoof touched the door and the memory faded to grey. This feels like eavesdropping, Taya slowly said. This is literally eavesdropping, I replied. Did you just now get that? My question is, were they actually talking to each other out loud, or was the coma just translating for us? Who knows? Love said. So, would you like the takeaway? I think it's only fair to give Taya some context. After the trip back from Hawaii, Flo left my head. I asked Celestia to teleport me to Cadance so I could talk to her about Flo. Eva joined us. I told them some of what we had been through since they left, too. The stories must have made her push her plan forward. I guess that's why they didn't wait to talk to me, Taya slowly said. Although I don't guess it would have mattered. I would have panicked more if they asked than I did when you told me, but I still would have agreed. If you say so. So, what can we learn from this one? I finally ask, looking over at Love. Eva is also aware that one of her main weapons is cuteness. She worries that you only agreed because she's cute and you didn't want to hurt her feelings. They're planning to come visit Canterlot at some point, I said. I'll do my best to prove there's nothing for her to worry about then. I'll need to practice walking around as a human, Taya said. I tried a pair of your heels while you were in the coma and they were awful. Why do you need to practice as a human? I slowly ask. So we can be humans together for you again, she happily replied. You weren't being human for me, I said. I'm perfectly happy with you the way you are. I guess you can be humans for yourselves, though. Either way, I need practice, she said. I won't let them out-cute me on my own turf. Says the one who hates being cute. Was adopting Eva and the others a good idea, Love? I ask. As a powerful noble that's incapable of having offspring of your own, adopting children is vital, Love said. They can be raised into your most useful, loving, and loyal subjects. In turn, they'd get a much better life, power, and luxury. Eva's special abilities make her more useful than some, but that matters a lot less if she's helping Cadance instead of you. Helping keep Cadance afloat is vital to me, I said. I certainly would like her at my side, but she's fine where she is for now. Do you think she'd also wanna be an Eternophile? Taya asked. She's probably smarter than that, so no, I said. She might not mind being an Eternagelt, though. Was that the only thing of note in this memory? I can eke out another little nugget of wisdom for my favorite demi-human, Love said, leaning forward to nuzzle me. It felt unnaturally warm and pleasant. They originally planned to discuss the issue with Taya first, but chose to hasten the process after your stories. Remember that the events you face would be more than most could handle and hearing about them causes concern and worry. Using your trauma for cheap laughs and to get out of unwanted conversations is rude and can have all manner of consequences. Like causing even more trauma, Taya muttered. I'm sorry for sharing my life stories with interested friends. K. Love's horn lit up and she lifted me up so she could more comfortably kiss me. Unfortunately, the Killjoy guide hates fun things, so she pulled me away before I could get my fix of pure bliss. Have you seen all you wish to see? My guide warmly asked, keeping me pressed firmly against her chest. Yep, I'm good, I said. I couldn't see her eyes flash from my position, but I could easily tell that everything went dark. We appeared in the middle of a thick forest, standing in a glade covered completely in moss. Gord was lounging on a mushroom in the shape of a couch. Kot was sitting across from him on a tree stump. Watcher was standing in front of the table sitting between the two, looking down at some documents on it. I would like you to explain these contracts, Watcher said. Very, very thoroughly. Kot slammed a knife into the table. And depending on your answers, you might end up leaving as a gelding. Wait, what? Gord slowly said, eyes going wide. You defiled Our Lady while she was vulnerable, Kot coldly replied. Her eyes went full psycho and a very small grin crossed her lips. Your lucky watcher talked me into leaving any of your cock left at all. I was planning on force-feeding it to you. And you're just okay with this? Gord shakily asked, turning his wide eyes to Watcher. You defiled Our Lady while she was vulnerable, Watcher said. Your lucky Kot talked me out of using Zekora's cursed dagger on you and dumping you in the Everfree so your body would be picked clean by a monster after you bled to death. So you're going to explain these contracts very thoroughly and, as she said, you might get to leave here intact. If we don't like your explanation, I am going to hold you down, Kot is going to geld you, and then we're going to go about our day. Well, all right then, Gord said, sitting up and looking much more attentive. So, Kot, you went to the party, right? How was Nav acting that night? Unusual, she said. Her eyes lost their intensity and she leaned back. It's rare to see her spend time with us like that. She seemed happy enough until I lost sight of her. Well, when I saw her on the deck, she was bawling her eyes out, Gord said. Inconsolably crying and babbling about hating dresses and being a woman and all kinds of things. So once the ship was secure, I took her inside to try and calm her down. Taya was sleeping in Nav's room, so I took her to mine. Of course, Kot said. I've caught your gaze on Our Lady many times. So? Gord said. Your eyes are on her all the time. How many times have you slept with her, hey? Since she became Our Lady, never, Kot said. Not that consensual relations matter. If she chose to defile herself upon you, that is a choice she is allowed to make. But I know what alcohol does to the mind. You mistook the important part of our statement, Watcher said. We don't care if you defile Nav. She's openly admitted to being a slut, so being angry about that is pointless. The important part was her vulnerability. So talk. While she was in my room, I managed to get her to stop crying. Instead, she started listing the things she hates. Those are on one of the contracts, but it's not an exhaustive list. Sometime after that, she began asking me for sex. I turned her down the first few dozen times, but as you said, she's a slut. I'm pretty sure she also mentioned something about humans being in heat all the time a few weeks ago. Kot hissed and shivered. I had no idea. Poor Nav. I guess that explains some things, Watcher said. So she kept pestering you for sex. I assume these contracts involve one of those laws you found. They sure do, Gord said. I strongly considered using magic to put Nav to sleep, but I thought about it for a little while and realized I had an interesting opportunity. Nav really wanted something and I really wanted something. Aren't you curious about how she really feels about everything? She never talks about it, but it's clear she's not happy. Seeing her like that just proved it for me. I am, Watcher said. But I don't see why you had to use sex to get what you wanted. Nav was very drunk, Kot said. You could have gotten her to agree to anything just by asking nicely. Why did you agree to have sex with her? I actually tried that, Gord said. She said that, as a vassal, everything I owned was hers anyway, so I had no other collateral to sign away in a contract other than direct services rendered. Did she actually say that while completely drunk? Kot said. Not in those exact words, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. She was being more vulgar than usual, but her vocabulary actually somehow got better. So instead of cutting your losses and calling it quits, you just gave in and had sex with her. Watcher asked. How pissed was she after seeing the contracts? Kot asked. For a moment, I thought I might not survive the morning, Gord sighed. Guys, I know I did something bad. But I did it because I want to help Our Lady. She's been keeping so much pain inside of herself for so long. I think we all know from experience just how untenable that is. Isn't it our duty as friends and vassals to help her through this? Was she worth possibly being your last watcher? Ask. Yes. My only regret would be that she wasn't sober. Funny, Kot said. Your only regret would also be the same reason she was your last. It is our duty to help Nav, that is true. However, I'm getting sick of the ends justifying the means, Watcher said. Be wary that the ends you seek comes quickly, Gord. If your means for helping Nav dip into this territory again, we'll make good on our threats. Nav is mine to please, Kot said. That is my place as her blood servant. If any of her vassals attend to her needs, it will be me. I'm not suicidal enough to get between you and Nav, Watcher said. Just keep it consensual. Don't worry, I'll break her will and make her mine soon, Kot said. I can't wait to hold my precious lady again. So how is that okay? Gord asked. Kot, are you going to use drugs to break Nav's will? No, I won't need them, she replied. She's easy enough to manipulate without them. That's why it's okay, Watcher said. Nav lets herself get picked up all the time. If Kot can seduce her, I don't see why that's an issue. Besides, she's a blood servant. I'm not sure what that means in cat culture, but it usually means that her entire being exists to help Nav. And if Nav is always in heat, it only makes sense that a blood servant's duty would involve tending to her needs. I tried presenting myself during the trip to Hawaii, but she wouldn't have me, Kot said. I learned from my mistakes and will try again when she gets back. This time, I won't let her slip from my grasp. Seriously, this is sounding worse than what I did. Gord said. My love is pure. Kot hissed. And on that note, I'm calling this meeting done, Watcher said. Since we have these contracts, we'll use them. But the next time Nav gets drunk, we all sit down and carefully decide what goes into the next contracts and how we convince her to sign them. Kot groaned and wrenched her knife out of the table. Gord breathed a sigh of relief. With that, it all went grey. So how's it feel to get defiled? Taya asked. I don't remember. I probably enjoyed it, though. So let's get to it, I guess. What can we learn from this one? Alcohol is bad, Reason replied. And trusting people is impossible, Rage added. Yeah, I'm going to be more careful about drinking, I said. Who did I make the mistake of trusting this time? Gord and Kot, Rage said. Kot is obviously crazy and Gord was out for your womanhood ever since you got it. I wouldn't say that trusting either of them was necessarily a mistake, but putting Gord in a situation where he could take advantage of me was dumb. And at this point, as long as Kot doesn't actually hurt me or anyone I care about, I'm considering it a win. She's obviously crazy, but I'm pretty sure part of that is just crazy love for me. Kot's definitely not going to hurt you, Taya said. Unless she cracks even harder, somehow. You mean like learning how all of her love for Nav is due to the pull? Reason asked. She uprooted her entire life to follow Nav around the world, all because she's being influenced. Her life before sucked, I said. It's probable the pull is what drew her to me, but she was correct when she told me that all of her choices before were bad ones. I'm hopeful she'll remember how great of a lady I am after learning why she loves me so much. Plus, it's not like she has anywhere else to go. Another important thing to note is that your vassals are, in fact, conspiring against you, Reason said. The next time you get impaired, they might try to force more contracts on you. Does it count as conspiring against you if they're doing it for your sake? Taya asked. Didn't you say talking about your problems is important and that the only reason you don't do it is because you hate yourself? Those aren't the words I used, I said, crossing my arms. I'm sure it is good for me to get things off my chest, but being forced to do it has the opposite effect. Making me sign any contracts while I'm drunk will piss me off, even if they're beneficial. Sounds like a good reason to stop drinking, Taya said. Agreed. Weed was pretty fun, but being impaired can bring more trouble than it's worth. And the last takeaway is something you didn't even pay any attention to, Reason said. Kot said you were acting unusual. Her definition of unusual behavior, for you, is happily interacting with people. Yeah, that's pretty unusual, Taya said. Mommy does her best to stay unhappy all the time. Speaking of which, why haven't I seen anyone for sadness yet? Aren't you depressed all the time? Depression isn't sadness, Rage said. It's emptiness. That's not something so easily represented. Besides, Flo began curing it when she was inside of you, then Aqua finished it by the time she was removed. That's a large chunk of the reason you started feeling ambition in the attack on the bunker. I guess that explains some things, I said. Well, what's done is done, I guess. Yeah, it's fair to say that getting along well with everyone is unusual for me. After all, putting up with everyone like that can be hard. Alcohol makes it easier. But man, Fae are a pain to deal with sometimes. Well gee, sorry for existing, Taya sarcastically replied. I forgive you, I said, patting her head. With luck, removing the pole will fix a lot of that. It essentially makes people compete for my affection, which is a huge pain. Do you really hate being showered with our love that much? Taya asked. I start hating it the minute the option to say no disappears. Do you know how terrifying it is to have Kot completely obsessed with me? Hell, back when I was basically forced into dating Luna, I was almost constantly worried about being teleported into her grasp. The sisters usually ask for permission, but if either of them wanted me, they could get me from anywhere. That was always on my mind. And then Chrysalis got in on the action and actually asked me to marry her. Turning down that proposal was nerve-wracking. Any of the four of them could make me disappear without a trace in a heartbeat, and until recently, there was nothing stopping them from doing so. You were scared? Taya slowly asked. Almost all the time. The princesses terrified me. All the confidence I showed in front of you was fake. In the beginning, if they wanted me, there was nothing that could stop them. I might have been able to last a little while on the run, but not long. Anyway, that's all water under the bridge now. How much of your time with me was just an act? Taya asked. Like you can talk, little Miss Cutie Pie. The important thing is that going forward, we don't have to act anymore. Just don't be too much of a scumbag and we should be good. K, I guess. Does that mean I should just strive to be better than you? Yep. I'm doing my best to make it easy for you. So, if there aren't any other takeaways, shall we carry on? Did Kot actually break your will? Taya asked. Sort of. The night we moved into the new house, she broke into my room while I was sleeping, cuddled as close to me as she could, and then played me like a fiddle until I gave in and let her do as she would. The fact that she was able to so easily break through my magical lock and wrap herself around me in my sleep was more than enough to prove that one way or another, it was going to happen. So I decided to give in, though I'm still not sure if it was the right choice. It was, Taya said. Now at least you get to enjoy her insanity instead of just fear it. I'm ready to move on now. As you wish, the guide said. Her eyes lit up and we popped up to our next adventure. We appeared on a large lily pad in the middle of a bog. A past version of Taya and Twilight were lying on it, looking over a book. The Taya standing next to me was looking around in wonder. There were several large groves of trees around and I could hear insects chirping, but there was no movement around us. I've never been here before, present Taya said. This is my tree thing acting up, I said. If you were both lying like this, you were probably on a bed or the floor. Either way, can we skip it? She asked. I don't want you eavesdropping on me. Too bad, I said. Besides, I like seeing how my favorite pony spends her time. Twilight's your favorite? Taya asked. Don't be silly, that's my job. Now let's listen. She huffed, but thankfully shut up. She'll be coming back soon, Twilight said, patting past Taya on the head. They already found the new fire elemental and are currently just waiting for permission to retrieve him. Why would they need permission? Taya asked. This is Mommy we're talking about, with all 13 water elementals behind her. The owner of the volcano in which he resides is the gigantic leader of the dragons, Pyrite, Twilight said. Due to some unforeseen diplomatic issues, Pyrite would likely be hostile if the elementals attempted to invade his domain without permission. Understatement of a lifetime. Issues. Taya slowly said. What did Mommy do this time? During this trip, I have come to understand Nav better, Twilight sighed. Every time she found some new stupid way of getting in trouble, I always made the mistake of blaming her for it. But this trip opened my eyes in a way that nothing else ever could, so I can safely come to this conclusion, it absolutely was not Nav's fault, at least this time. Whoa. So you're saying she really messed up, hey? While I haven't gotten the full story, the blame seems to lie almost solely on Celestia, with a small chunk going toward Reginald. I'm confident that the full story would only marginally change the amount of blame to go around. So Mommy really fucked up, Taya sighed, plopping her head on the lily pad. The real Taya standing next to me groaned. Mommy, jump in the water so you don't have to listen. Your lack of confidence in me hurts, I replied. I was, at most, 5% to blame. Reginald probably took 15 to 20%. The rest was on Celestia. My filly didn't reply, so the vision continued as Twilight leaned over to nuzzle Taya. I'm sure she'll be willing to tell you bits and pieces of her trip when she gets back. And when I get the full story from her, I'll give you even more bits and pieces. Between the two of us, you can decide for yourself how much she screwed up. But until then, shouldn't you think about ways to spend time with her when she gets back? Nah, no need, Taya said. It would be too much of a bother for her. The only time she'll spend with me is on the battlefield, so I'd rather worry about being more useful. Present Taya groaned and jumped toward the water so she wouldn't have to hear more, but I grabbed her tail and made her fall. A firm grip on her tail kept her from trying to scramble away. Don't worry, this is far from the worst thing I've heard about myself, I said. It probably wasn't much of a comfort, though. She seemed to be too embarrassed to reply, still. Either that or she just wanted to get it over with. Tell me about it, Twilight sighed. Catching Nav's attention is almost impossible unless you're useful. The only way I could get her to agree to be my travel partner is by offering to write books for her. Travel partner? Taya said. Is that what you're calling it? Mommy just calls you a fuck buddy. That actually made Twilight blush. Well, that's one of the things she calls you. She also enjoys Twatlight Spankle. And just like that, I need to have another conversation about what she says and where, Twatlight Spankle replied. I've found that if you want to spend time with Nav, you need to think outside the box. Being useful is the quickest way, but if you can pique her interest with something, she'll be all yours. Isn't the only thing that piques her interest sex? I think we both know where that road went. For you, Twilight said with a small smile. As for me, there's a festival coming up soon in Griffiths. I plan to invite Nav. I thought Mommy didn't do parties, festivals, events, parades, or anything else that might be fun. She doesn't, normally. But there's something quite special about this festival that involves the date and season. It'll be in the middle of next month. It took some time for the gears in Taya's head to churn, but after a few grueling seconds, she blinked. Wait. Isn't Valentine's Day coming up? Nope, Twilight said. Hearts and Hooves Day is coming up. This festival is right up that alley. Oh yeah, the pony version of Valentine's Day, Taya said with a nod. A few seconds later, it really hit her. Wait. You're taking Mommy to a Valentine's festival? I don't care what Nav calls it, it's Hearts and Hooves Day, Twilight said. And the festival itself isn't based around that day, but let's just say it'll be easy for me to keep Nav's interest while we're there, assuming she decides to join me. I wanna go. Taya immediately said. Nope, not gonna happen, Twilight just as quickly replied. And that's absolutely not a point I will budge on. If anyone goes, it'll be just me and Nav. You'll have to think outside of your own box, Taya. That's too hard, she whined. It's much easier to just peek outside of yours instead and then copy it, but better. Then I'll add an extra detail, something I was hoping not to. This festival is for adults only. Even if I was willing to let you go, Nav would never forgive me if I did. So that's the end of it. I'll be happy to brainstorm ways you can spend time with Nav, but she's mine at the festival. Ugh, life is suffering, Taya sighed. Don't take Nav's human sayings, Twilight said. Especially the more disturbing and macabre ones like that. Fine, then I wish I had just died at birth. No you don't, Twilight said. If you had, you never would have met Nav. And I know Nav doesn't mean it, because she never would have met you. For the record, now that I had learned what Discord planned for me, I wished more than ever to have never been born. Not that this record means anything, since nobody will ever see it and anyone who does will be killed by the traps on the way out. I'm not sure that's true, actually, Taya dubiously said. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, Twilight said. Pretend it's true long enough and you'll force her to believe it, too. Now, if you really do want to be useful, I think studying might be more helpful than talking. Can't we just go blow some things up? Taya asked. I mean, doesn't Celestia have a training area for stuff like this? It's difficult to make a training area durable enough for either of us, unfortunately, Twilight said. I asked her a few times if I could set up a teleportation circle to a desert so I could practice there, but she was afraid I'd somehow make a desert worse. So for now, reading is your best bet. Then I guess I'll read, Taya sighed, finally turning her head back to the book. With that, it all turned grey. So why did you think it was all my fault? I asked, finally letting Taya's tail go. Because it's always your fault, she said. I mean, isn't it? With that, she stopped pouting and finally stood. Depends on who you ask, I guess. In my eyes, no. I guess if my filly can't sympathize with me, I truly have failed as a mother. Obviously, the guide said. The fact that she even wanted to be an Eternifilly should have been enough of a hint for that. Don't bully mommy, Taya said, her horn lighting up. So, what are the takeaways here? I ask. Or was the goal just to embarrass Taya? You're not very approachable, Love said, appearing before us. And you're almost impossible to please, Passion added, suddenly standing next to Love. This one is Passion, I said, nodding at Cadance. I couldn't remember if Taya had seen her yet, so I decided to remind her. And yet, I've been told those things before. Not being approachable was on purpose, because I generally don't want to be approached. Being impossible to please was partially because of depression and partially because the people trying to please me were dumb. I'm pretty sure you made Pinky cry a few times, Taya said. It was worse when you found a way to blow off the parties entirely, but even when you showed up and just didn't participate, she still at least teared up. Maybe she should have stopped forcing me to attend, I said. I refuse to take the blame for making someone feel sad after they forced me to do something I find miserable. I told all of them multiple times that I didn't like parties. I feel zero guilt for making Pinky cry over it. Couldn't you at least pretend? The guide asked. Lying is wrong, I replied, crossing my arms. I assumed telling the truth would make her stop. Turns out, the ponies are both dumb and annoying. I'm a pony, too, Taya softly said, her ears drooping. No, you're a tree sister, I said, patting her head. That actually made her grin and got her ears to perk back up. That said, I can no longer pretend I'm not important. That means I need to become approachable. And now that I'm actually feeling motivated to get out and do things, I'm hoping I'll be easier to please. That doesn't mean I'll start enjoying parties. There are few things that stoke your fires, Passion said. At the moment, violence is one of them. Be wary that it does not become your driving force. That is something that must always be watched for on the battlefield, especially when at war. The goal of the war on Tartarus is to scare everyone to the point where they won't want to fight us, I said. Which might have the opposite reaction and make everyone team up against you, Love said. Magi-Tech artillery stationed on airships might make some wary, after all. That wasn't my only idea, I said. Anyway, I'll be in charge of the war effort. I'll let the others handle diplomacy. I'm sure it'll work out. If all else fails, I'll just go for world conquest and hope I finish before Discord gets bored and kills everyone. Very optimistic, Passion replied, rolling her eyes. So how are we supposed to kill the demons, anyway? Taya asked. I thought they were invincible in Tartarus. Nothing's completely invincible, I said. If we can't kill them, I'm sure we can find some way to contain them. I think Celestia said they were weak against iron and silver. We can use a heavy nail gun to crucify them on an iron cross, then encase the cross in molten silver followed by tungsten. Finally, either dump them in a huge pit or toss them into the sun with magic. What does crucify mean? Taya asked, tilting her head. The only way I'll ever answer that question is if I have to do it to someone. Basically, it's a torturous execution method. Taya snorted and looked over to the guide. What does crucify mean? The guide cleared her throat and Pain appeared with a smile. A moment later, a cross appeared behind her. I decided to turn away so I didn't have to watch. Unfortunately, I still heard the meaty thuds, Taya's horrified gasps, and Pain's horrific, maddening laughter. That is what crucify means, the guide sweetly said when the last nail was driven. Pain was still giggling, but at least her cackle was gone. Any more questions? Sorry for not trusting you, Mommy, Taya said. At least she finally managed to tear her eyes away from what was probably a grisly sight. So, anything else? I asked, still facing the other way. Not necessarily, Love whispered right next to my right ear. We'd be happy to stay here for a while, Passion breathlessly added next to my left ear. While a threesome with Love and Passion would probably feel amazing, I'm not going to do it while my daughter is here and there's a crucified cat looking down on us and giggling. TCH, tease. Pain called. All right, let's move on, I said. The guide's eyes lit up and we did just that. End of Chapter 198.